Welcome back to the Chris HOJ-Cast. This is episode 19, and we have another topical subject for this HOJ-Cast, and it is revolving around the sale that ended early in the morning hours Eastern Time of the 2007-08 Exquisite Collection, as I have shown on the screen here. Dual Logoman Autograph 1 of 1, featuring Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, both on-card autographs. Kobe's Logoman, the traditional Jerry West silhouette with blue and red fabric color, and the Michael Jordan being a gold Logoman set against white mesh jersey. The gold signifying that this Logoman ostensibly came from a jersey celebrating the NBA's 50th anniversary, which I believe was the 1996-97 season, I think, something like that. Anyway, I have the card displayed on screen for the YouTube viewers. Card has a magnificent platinum holofoil that encompasses through a patch window, or the border of a patch window, both of the Logoman pieces, and then the holofoil also fills in the Upper Deck logo. And I really pay close attention to how the Upper Deck logo is used on a card surface, because oftentimes it can be a sneakily beautiful ornament on the card's front, and then on the back it's often a hologram, which can be something to dazzle the eye if we turn a card over onto its backside. Now that makes me curious, is the hologram on the backside of this card? Yes, it is. There's an Upper Deck hologram on the backside right there. Very cool. So this is a very very stunning card. It is graded PSA 6 with no autograph grade provided, and it closed at a price including buyer's premium of $12,932,000, which makes it the highest selling public sale of a sports card ever. And so let's really just break this sale down from a bunch of different angles. And I've got a little bonus segment at the end where I want to talk about something completely unrelated in the NBA analytics community. I have a grievance to air as politely as I can, but first let's talk about this sale. And this segment's obviously going to be the bulk of the show. So what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And I'm going to take a stab at answering that from my perspective. And I'm a Michael Jordan collector. I collect lots of other players too. I do not collect Kobe. I collect lots of different products and eras, but I do not collect, or at least to this point, I haven't collected anything from Exquisite. And I also, have some perspective to offer as somebody who co-founded and works on Card Ladder. And I just, I don't know, it would waste too much time trying to think of all the different perspectives that I sort of have that are obvious and not obvious, but those are two of the bigger ones. And I'm just going to try to chime in and provide some context from my point of view. What I say here is not intended to represent the point of view of the market. It's not intended to represent the point of view of any other person but myself. And I'll try to do my best to frame things in those terms. Also, I sort of give those general perspectives that I have, but there are a lot of axioms, principles that I adhere to that come with each of those positions that I hold. So for example, as a Michael Jordan collector, that tells you a little something. That tells you that I like to collect Michael Jordan items, and more specifically his sports cards. But Michael Jordan collectors vary tremendously. Some of us focus on playing days cards. Some of us focus on rookie or early mid 80s cards. Some of us focus only on star. Some of us focus on 90s parallels. Some of us focus on 90s inserts. Some of us focus on Exquisite era. Some of us love patch autograph, especially game worn patch autograph. Some of us love the retros. Some of us love the the post-playing days entertainment or pop culture cards that don't show him in his athletic pose whatsoever, but instead as a pop culture figure. There's just a ton of different ways to collect Michael Jordan, and I almost think no two collectors collect him exactly the same. If they did, they would, presumably have identical collections, and I don't think there are any identical Michael Jordan collections out there, or very few if there are. So, as a Michael Jordan collector, I also my preferences. I tend to really like his ultra rare cards from the 90s, and if it's full blown playing days, even better. And so I've actually undergone a rebrand as a Michael Jordan collector. It's very hard to distinguish oneself as a Michael Jordan collector. I think that's almost one of the theories that maybe we'll get to a little bit later that's at play with why the price for this card was so high. Is that is there some status or some signaling going on as a collector trying to define themselves, to distinguish themselves somehow in the very competitive and difficult to maneuver Michael Jordan market. And the lane that I've come to embrace quite recently, which is the culmination of collecting experience and insights and sports fandom and just a tremendous arc that I've undergone over the last nine or so years, is that I've decided I want to be known as the Michael Jordan 1-of-1 collector, particularly with an emphasis on 90s cards, although not exclusive to 90s, but that's really the lane that I'd love to occupy. And I think there's an opportunity there to carve an identity for myself there that not many other collectors before me have carved. So there's a little sample of kind of what I like to collect from the Michael Jordan point of view. You'll surely see those biases color my review of this sale and the topics that are adjacent to it, even if it's subtle or not totally dominating my entire point of view. But there's certainly a real chance that my sort of arbitrary preferences, the things that I like that are largely, if not entirely, historical contingencies, namely that I grew up in the 90s, so it sort of makes sense that I have an affinity for those things, or that I've been heavily immersed in collecting ultramodern over the last 5 years, so that has created a strong preference towards one-of-ones, as those are certainly the apex cards of several of the players that I collect from the ultramodern era, and 90s doesn't always necessarily see it that way. So there are lots of different ways that the things that I've come to like, that I like because I happen to grow up in an era, or I happen to collect during a particular time, or I happen to be influenced by particular subjective tastes that are just unique to me. And it would be difficult, well, quite honestly, it's impossible to assume the perspective of the objective observer. There just isn't one. And so it's far better instead, I think, to sort of state where I'm coming from with as much forthcoming upfront transparency as I can provide. And instead of trying to shed those perspectives and try to sit on this neutral throne or something, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm just going to tell you exactly where I'm coming from, and then I will do my best to be fair, to be equitable, to not privilege my point of view over any other point of view, but I still will give mine, and I'm really not equipped to give others points of view. That's for others to do. And if one does want to piecemeal together something approaching objectivity, I'll suggest the Nietzschean notion of intersubjective consensus. Nietzsche put forth the idea that perhaps, given that objectivity isn't possible, that personal preference colors every point of view and is impossible to shed, and that there really isn't this view from nowhere, that instead we can average or approximate something that attempts to take into consideration multiple points of view, or rather than the singular subjective point of view, he puts forth this notion of the intersubjective, which is the idea that if we take into consideration the opinion of all the onlookers, multiple subjective opinions, that maybe we can start to get close to saying something that approximates the hope of objectivity. So I think that's an important strain of thought here. I think most collectors are thinking about things from that point of view when they opine on topics, but maybe it's not always explicit. So I wanted to lay down that preamble as something of a caveat or a prologue that informs the audience that what follows is from a particular point of view and that that's inescapable. But that perhaps taking in multiple points of view on this topic will help a listener paint a fuller, more comprehensive picture if that's what their goal is. So let's start with the fact that this particular sale, the significance of it eclipsing what held the throne, the crown, as the highest selling card for about 3 years, almost to the date, which was the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle SGC 95, which sold for $12.6 million in August of 2022, also in a Heritage Platinum August auction. That record stood for 3 years as the highest public sale until this one, which ended at a tick over 12.9. So the fact that it is the highest sale of all time, I think, is going to prove material to how the headlines and their domino effect ends up impacting onlookers, audiences, prospective collectors, people who are in the space, people who work in the space, people who are thinking about working here. That the fact that it did actually tick over 12.6, it reminds me of an analogy I like to make when discussing the fact that the difference between somebody, for example, who qualifies for the Olympics and somebody who doesn't, or the difference between an Olympic athlete and just a really fast gym teacher, is sometimes tenths of a second. It can be a minor discrepancy that separates qualification from not, and it's sort of a variation of Sorites paradox, which is that Sorites paradox is sort of how many grains of sand are needed before something becomes a pile? Is it or a pile of sand, right? So the same thing in reverse here. How much worse can you be from the best and still qualify? And if one guy runs the 100-meter in 10 seconds flat and the other guy runs it in 10.01 seconds, that the difference is so minuscule, but because we have these cutoffs that if we're only taking the three fastest and third is 10 and fourth is 10.01, that minuscule difference is the difference between qualifying for the Olympics and not. So I think about these things, and I think there's a dose of that here when we think about how this eclipsed the Mantle by just $332,000. But the fact that it did eclipse it, the fact that it is the highest selling sports card of all time is going to be significant when the headlines start circling, or the headlines start trickling down into newspapers, publications, talk shows, media, so on. That the headline of the highest selling sports card of all time, featuring Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, is a quite a different headline from the second highest sports card of all time, behind Mickey Mantle. That people can conceptually grasp the idea of the highest selling without needing to do any extra mental processing. Whereas if it were the second highest, there's this asterisk. It's not quite the best. It's not quite the highest. And then people have to keep in mind several different pieces of information. This is the easiest, most direct thing to process, that this is the highest selling public sale of all time, and it's of two of the most iconic and beloved athletes of all time. It's very simple and direct. And so the fact that it did become the highest selling card is going to have a more profound ripple effect. It's going to resonate with more people. It's going to be more memorable. It's going to be a more viral piece of news, that, or at least I think it will be. And I think some of the obvious consequences of that are, well, for one, you're going to see a whole new set of people take an interest in the sports card industry. And the fact that a card of Kobe and MJ could be worth 13 million is going to, on some level, pique the interest of people who just, quite frankly, didn't think that would ever be possible. And when you're talking to the level of 13 million, the opportunity cost of $13 million is just phenomenally high. You can just think of all the different things that $13 million can do, all the different assets it could purchase, all the different practical uses it could have, the businesses that it could start, the gifts that it could bestow upon family, the vacations it could purchase, the luxury items that it could bring in, the real estate that it could command. And it's significant that somebody was willing to find that this was their preferred way to allocate almost $13 million. And in fact, those who are more sophisticated will understand that that there were two bidders at that level, and that maybe somebody was even willing to allocate more. And that signals something. That certainly signals something to just onlookers, and it will inevitably inspire some residual people from the pandemic era who then maybe went away. It'll inspire some people who never took an interest or a renewed interest, although I'm not sure. I think a lot of people from the pandemic era, especially because of the stay-at-home stuff, I think many people discovered their old collections, but there are probably still a few who didn't. So there may be some returning people who sort of went dormant, and now that we're in this bullish environment, it capped off with this headline sale that there'll be returning interest on that level. There will be possibly new people who, this will provide occasion for them to rediscover their old card collection to see if they have anything of value. And that process entails getting on eBay and or starting to perform searches, engaging with artificial intelligence, say, hey, what is this worth? How can I figure out what this is worth? Maybe they dig up some old Beckett magazines, and all of a sudden this can start to snowball into, hey, this is pretty fun, and this is pretty interesting, and things have changed a lot and matured a lot. So then there's also the concept of people looking to diversify portfolios, especially at very high levels of wealth, who might see that 13 million might be a small percentage of a certain portfolio, and they might say, hey, maybe we should take a stab at this place just because we continue to see these headlines and these high prices. And let me use that to bring up a particular observation. I don't mean my comments to be comprehensive here of the ripple effect of this headline, but I just want to point out a few things. I think listeners and others and collectors across the board can sort of fill in for themselves what all of the implications are when these headlines do start blasting out tomorrow. And then, presumably the biggest players in this space at the corporate level, whether it's PSA or whether it's Fanatics or whether it's the auction houses, Gold and Heritage, so on and so forth, that they'll all have particular use cases for this particular data points that they will use it to advance their interests, which in turn will on some level increase enthusiasm, excitement for, and or recruitment of new people into card collecting. Might also push a few out too, as they sort of sense a top. So it's not all accumulating towards the expansion or the growth. There also might be people who leave on account of this too, who see this as the signal that it's time to sell and take a break. But I want to pivot here into a particular piece of marketing that I think is instructive, and I've seen it posted across all of Fanatics Collect's social accounts that I follow, which would happen to be Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it is derived, or rather, it is a summary of a wonderful piece of content that the Real 27 guy made initially. And he made that piece of content before the auction results came in. And now Fanatics is trumpeting it on its socials in the wake of the result. And so here, let me do this read of the content from its Twitter account. It's rather brief. It's a pretty concise summary. Breaking news. He paid $25,000 for this card, and it just sold for $12.932 million. In 2013, collector Gerald Fortier spent $25,000 on a dual logoman featuring Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. 2 years later, a longtime customer offered $170,000. That offer was too strong to turn down, and the card changed hands. For the next decade, it stayed in the same private collection, and its legacy only grew. Last night, the MJ and Kobe logoman sold for $12.932 million at auction, the highest selling sports card in history. Gerald once owned it, and while it's no longer in his collection, he'll always be a part of its story. And then we have an image of the card and an image of Gerald. And I think one of the reasons why this piece of content via the Real 27 guy, but regurgitated and captioned and summarized by Fanatics Collect's social account, this is so attractive to them. They like this so much because it pushes rather subtly, I think, or maybe not subtly, but there's this concept in sales of sort of thinking past the sale, of sort of a salesperson should assume that the person that they're selling something to is already going to buy it, and then they frame things in terms of the transaction is inevitably happening, and then what happens after, thinking past the sale. Or a different sort of take on this is sort of the pop psychology idea of manifestation, that if I believe something will happen and I tell myself it's going to happen, that somehow increases the likelihood of it happening. And here we sort of have it's not quite thinking past the sale, but it's the same mechanism. It's sort of what's embedded, what's obvious, what's assumed, what's taken for granted in this particular social media post is the idea that somebody bought this card for $25,000 and flipped it 2 years later for a profit of $145,000, and that's in 2015 dollars, which the dollar has lost much value since then. So $145,000 flip over a 2-year period. So what's embedded in this story, what's taken for granted, is that somebody made a bunch of money flipping this card a decade ago. And then what's further embedded, and what I think is the main the primary subtext here, is that somebody bought it for $170,000 and sold it for almost $13 million. The ultimate example of the unearthing of a gold mine, the striking oil that somebody collected cards, paid $170,000, enjoyed the privilege of owning the card for 10 years, and then cashed out for $13 million. And what isn't explicit, but what's sort of hiding underneath, is why not you? Why can't this be you? Could you be the next person to come into this hobby, to buy a card for $25,000 and flip it for $170,000, or to be the person who bought it for $170,000 and end up flipping it for almost $13 million? That's the subtext here. I think that's the hook that will end up catching the attention of plenty of people. Is the potential that as the upcoming generation says, why not me? It's tapping into that. Why not you? If Gerald can do it, if the private collector can do it, why can't you? And not to overanalyze, but the image of Gerald is incredibly relatable. He's got the sleeve tattoo, and he just looks like a sports fan. He's a guy that you might see at the bar. Here he is at his display case, and it's just very relatable. Why can't this be you? And so I think that is the subtext of the marketing angle that I think Fanatics likes, is recruiting people into collecting through the avenue of, hey, buy a card now, and there could be exponential returns down the line if you pick the right one. So let me return and put the image of the card back on the screen. Some of the other thoughts here that I had is in particular, this the idea that that what does this do? So that I've sort of addressed from a few different points of view how this impacts outsiders who are looking in and who might who this headline or these particular pieces of marketing might bring them in under the promise of life changing enrichment. And honestly, 170,000 to 13 million life changing undersells it. This is generational wealth. Just to spit out the awful cliche, but it's it is 13 million, an infusion of 13 million, if properly invested and conservatively invested, most likely can see multiple generations to prosperity. Although studies show, I think, that as wealth is passed down from generations, it almost always depletes, which is a topic for another day. So, all right, let's do this. Let's do this next part here. So now let's shift from outsiders to insiders. So what does this show to people who already are in the space? Well, one of the things that it shows is that whether we're talking about buyers or sellers, this price in particular, this transaction, the fact that it is the highest sale ever, the fact that it's almost the highest basketball sale ever by a multiple of 3, that the previous highest basketball sale was, I think, 5.2 million, that the previous highest sale for either of these players was in the ballpark of like $3 million. I think the highest basketball sale prior was a LeBron Exquisite Gold RPA, and that the prior highest sale for either of these guys was in the $2 or $3 million ballpark. And so this changes what is possible for cards of the category of basketball, of the brand Exquisite, of the players Kobe and MJ, of the type of Logoman Autograph, of the manufacturer Upper Deck, of the holder of PSA. There is something. What's the word? There's something that matches the sentiment of this era, that it is a PSA slab sitting atop that public ranking, whereas previously it was SGC. At PSA having the lion's share of the grading volume for sports cards. And there's something about these athletes that these are two of the most heavily collected athletes, and that basketball has been certainly one of the sports that has ascended and come to dominate this ultra modern era, this pandemic and post-pandemic market. That it is a memorabilia autograph card. That these are innovations that started arriving in the late 90s, and that here we are, a quarter of a century removed roughly from their advent, and now they have provided the materials upon which the highest recorded public sports card sale depends. So this idea of what is possible, I think this certainly changes the scale in the mindset of the collector. This changes what could happen. This changes the horizon. This expands what is permissible for the collector, the audience member, the business owner, the speculator, the flipper, the dealer, the card shop owner, all the stakeholders. This changes what has to be cognitively accepted as realizable, that a basketball card can enter into the 8-figure territory. That was something that I wasn't sure if we would ever see that. And I'm still not sure, is something that we'll get to later, is whether or not this sale actually should be illustrating what is possible. But this is the great descriptive normative distinction, that I do think that it is accurate to describe that this is perspective altering. That this will have an expansive impact on what the potential price ceiling is for a variety of different types of sports cards. Now, whether it should is a completely different question, and I will touch on that a little bit later. Whether what this price means in the context that I view it in. But the social proof of this purchase, it likely will have those ramifications. This will change what buyers and sellers and onlookers believe is possible in terms of price. I think that, how do I get inside the head of the collector or the entity or whatever the motives are of the buyer here? How do I get into their head and figure out what they were thinking and why they bid this much, and when they might have been willing to tap out, and what is the appeal of this card? And I think the appeal, I think this card has a terrific elevator pitch, especially for that can resonate both with the depths of the most experienced savvy collector and with the most novice entry level, which is the headline of Heritage's description. And I thought this description was masterful on a number of levels, with the headline being, quote, "the one and only Jordan Kobe dual signed logoman that there will ever be." And not only is that an accurate, succinct description, but it also evokes a bit of tragedy, because processing the final portion of that this is the only one that will ever be, and one says, well, why is that? And the reason why is because Kobe is no longer around to be able to sign anything. So it tugs at the emotions. It succinctly makes a wonderful elevator pitch that this is this could be framed. So we have the idea of a one of one, right, which is a card that has just one example and often is stamped as such. Then we have the one of one, which is a card that is just one example, and there are no other examples that parallel the same thing that the one of one parallels. So this wouldn't be a one of one if there was, say, this particular version of it, and then there was let's say this one was called gold, and then there was another black, and so you had a gold dual logoman autograph one of one, and then a black dual logoman autograph one of one, and they both maintained the same design elements, had the same card number, and were visibly and obviously parallels of the same source material. So the fact that this is so now we've gone from one of one to one of one, and then this sort of is the first instance in which I can provide a fourth one to the formulation. This is a one of one of one of one, a one of one of one of one, because it is a category one of one, with the category being a dual logoman autograph Kobe MJ card. It is the only one, full stop. There are it's from Exquisite, but there are none otherwise from Exquisite, none otherwise from any other product. This is it. This is all she wrote. So a one of one of one of one. I promise not to do that much more, if ever again. Honestly, it's incredibly annoying just hearing myself say it. But I say that in jest to make the point that there is a level of rarity and elusiveness to this card that is masterfully summed up in the tagline that was provided. And the author of it and whoever else was responsible for marketing it knew that, and they plopped it right there at the top, and they even punctuated it with an exclamation mark, certainly knowing that it would be it would just be a wonderful elevator pitch. And I just allow me just to read a few sentences from it. Here's the opening sentence. "Do you hear that rumbling? It's the sound of the standing world record price for a basketball card getting ready to fall." Okay, so it's quite a work of art to see how this was marketed and described in the verbal medium, in the written medium. So where do I want to go from here. All right, so I was touching sort of on what was the particular buyer's psychology. Do they see this as maybe the best card ever made? And I did notice several social media posts that were celebrating this result late last night, that were trumpeting the notion this is the greatest card ever made, this is the GOAT card, this is the best card to ever exist, and so on. And is it plausible that the buyer might have felt that way too? And maybe it is. The pitch, the tagline is certainly terrific. The simplicity of the only dual Logoman autograph of Kobe and MJ. It comes from Exquisite. Kobe and MJ, for at least some people, are Mount Rushmore heads in basketball history, perhaps two of the most, if not the most influential athletes to hail from the sport of basketball. Those two in particular, their impact on the Asian market, on the overseas market, is perhaps unrivaled, or perhaps Yao Ming might have something to say about that, but it's close. It's quite close. There are not many people besides Yao who are as close. Maybe Curry has something to say. LeBron obviously has massive fan bases worldwide, but there are not many who have reached the level of celebrity in that particular market that Kobe and MJ have, and especially as it relates to sports card collecting. So it's conceivable, to say the least, that the buyer formed a hypothesis that this is perhaps the best or one of the very best cards ever. But more to say on that in a minute. One final thing is that I think we should be patient here in our review of this, and that we should it's funny to bring this up this late in the podcast. I sort of always take it for granted, but I want to make it explicit here that we should make sure it's paid, which is something I think about all the time in my capacity as head of research at Card Ladder. We should make sure that it's paid, obviously. And also, though, let's see who the buyer is if they choose to go public, and it would be insightful if they did, that we could learn probably quite a bit about the mind state of the collector if they do choose to go public. But on the other hand, leaving it to the imagination and the the fanciful notion of the legion of private, well-capitalized, high net worth individuals who avoid social media and don't give interviews, and who just privately, these secret billionaires or very wealthy people who sort of privately accumulate the best cards, that keeping intact that mystique has can induce bullish sentiment in the market itself too, especially if contrasted against a collector coming forth and providing the rationale, and then it turns out to be not very deep or compelling. There's sort of somebody comes out and says, I'm new to this thing, and this was the coolest card going, and I wanted to deploy a lot of money, and then I got into this bidding war, and I had a few drinks, and then here we go, here it is, but I'm going to honor it, and I think it's really cool that I have the highest sale ever. That would be, we could learn a lot, and it could really change sentiment towards what the sale means, depending upon what the collector might come forth and say, which is why it's actually a very delicate matter. If the collector does come forth, and if they do, what level of media exposure are they willing to take on, and how well reasoned is this purchase, how carefully can they navigate discussing the finer points of collecting and product offerings, and their knowledge of market history, their knowledge of the sport. I mean, a lot of those things could really be put to the test and laid bare. And the more that I think about it, the more likely I think it is that it would not probably impress. So perhaps there's an angle that says keep this private, so that the imagination can run wild, filling in the gaps of what the buyer might have been thinking and what their motivation might be, and so forth. Okay, so let's get to this next part here, which is the $1 million question, or rather the $13 million question. Was this an overpay? Was this an overpay? I think that is a question staring this topic in the face. And so to answer that, let me and I'm going to give my answer on this. All right, this is my point of view. Not I would never imply or state outright that my point of view is the right one, that it should carry the day, that it should influence the way that you think at all. If I have any wish, if I have any hope, of what the impact of me giving my opinion might be, it would be simply to inspire the listener to develop to the highest level that they possibly can their sophistication and knowledge, and that they form their own independent opinion in the assessment of all the information that they can assemble. And towards that end, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to navigate a spreadsheet as I sort of provide some color, some perspective from my own point of view, and I'm going to make this spreadsheet available in the show notes through whichever medium you consume this, whether it's YouTube or a podcast player. That there will be in the show description or the show notes a link to this public spreadsheet, so that if you'd like, you can have access to this information too. So I am going to use this spreadsheet to help start providing my opinion on this sale and whether it was an overpay, and or perhaps phrased differently, where might I rank this card among the menu of cards? Which, as an aside, I think that is the proper starting point for the analysis of the valuation of any card, of the ranking of any card, is that it's a logical necessity that the ranker must have a sense and access to something approaching the total menu of available options, or at least something approaching a comprehensive list of the relevant comparables. And that it almost is an absurdity to enter into a discussion of ranking or valuing something without knowing what the alternatives are. If I'm opining on what something is and where it might rank, I need to make sure I'm ranking everything, right? I need to make sure that I haven't left a stone unturned. And I've seen, incidentally, several comments relating to this particular card. I mean, this comes from 07-08 Exquisite, which would be the fifth year, I suppose, of Exquisite basketball. That this card was a bit of an oddity. That this card was rather obscure. That prior to the launch of this card at auction, that very few people could even tell you that it existed. And I am mostly in that camp. I have encountered the card just through different forms of research that were unrelated to it. I did encounter that card in the composition of the spreadsheet, which we were about to use to discuss this price and this ranking. But this card certainly wasn't there are no lesser versions of it that the masses are chasing. Or I shouldn't say lesser, I should say more common versions, more accessible versions. There is no iconic base version of this. It's just this. It's just this one of one card. And so it was quickly elevated from obscurity to being the highest selling card of all time, which is an interesting aside. That's completely different from something like the 52 Mantle, which is ubiquitous, which can be seen at any card show. It can be seen for sale on any number of marketplaces at any time. There is no shortage of sales history of it. If one were motivated to buy one, perhaps you wouldn't be able to get one of the highest graded copies, or you might not be able to get one with an in-person autograph easily, but you could obtain a copy of it pretty much at any time. You might need to pay a little bit over market, but not too much. So that's just it's a completely different world, and there is something of a momentum, I think, at least from my own collecting point of view, that is an aversion to the iconic and an embrace of the obscure, and not just the obscure, but the rare, the truly rare obscure thing. And this sale is perhaps something that after the fact I can fit into my mental model of what I'm searching for. In other words, it doesn't surprise me that just because this card had zero publicity prior to its launch, that ultimately on its merits, it ended up becoming the highest selling card ever. I do understand the appeal of an Apex card, that it doesn't need that history of iconicness to do that. So, back to the spreadsheet. What I have here is a spreadsheet of every Michael Jordan 1-of-1 card that I've been able to identify consulting with a variety of checklist sources up through the year 2007-08. So it includes Michael Jordan only cards. Those are the focus of it because I'm a Michael Jordan collector. But it also includes Michael Jordan cards that are multiplayer, and it also includes printing plates, which are cards of a sort, especially when they end up being numbered to a checklist, pack inserted. But they also are materials, so they have a dual function that sort of is slightly different than the function of a sports card. But they do have sort of this end purpose of functioning as a sports card when they end up getting numbered to a checklist and inserted into a product. So I've broken the spreadsheet into those three conceptual categories, and then within each category, things are broken down further by year, by brand, by card type, and so what I did was let's and so I will finish this spreadsheet. This is a labor of love. It's something that I've been working on for a few years, but I really picked up working on in the last few months as I've taken this careful interest in Michael Jordan 1-of-1 collecting, and I've decided, it's similar to the sentiment that I was just expressing a bit earlier, that it's quite important that I understand the full menu of offerings when I'm entering into this collecting venture, that this is the most, from my point of view, the most disciplined and appropriate way to approach is to make sure that I know everything that's out there, and that can be a very clever way of discovering things that maybe nobody else has ever noticed or thought about before, because I'd be shocked if many had ever attempted a spreadsheet like this. I also should put the caveat that I can't assure anybody that this spreadsheet is truly comprehensive. I've done my best to attack multiple sources to verify what it says, and to identify everything that could possibly meet the criteria of being a Michael Jordan 1-of-1 card. But it's certainly possible that some of the checklists omitted something that does exist, in fact, or I didn't properly consume the checklist site, or some combination of those two. So I make no warrants as to its true comprehensiveness, but I can certainly attest to the fact that in earnest I have tried to make it comprehensive. And so what you'll notice here as you look at this spreadsheet is that the first year of Michael Jordan 1-of-1s was 1997-98. Second year was 98-99, and it continues from there. 98-99, and then 99-2000 was a proliferation of 1-of-1s. I think that's going to end up being the year with the most 1-of-1s for Michael Jordan of any year. That year ended up producing 234. Contrast that against, there was only 7 in the first year of Michael Jordan 1-of-1 cards, and then some of the subsequent years, like 03-04 looks like it ends up having 16. So as an aside, but I'll leave it to the audience if you'd like to click the link and to sort of dive into some of this information, see what you think about it. But anyway, let's try this approach. Let's start by simply hitting Control F, typing in logo, because that's hopefully going to bring me to any instance of a Logoman Autograph Michael Jordan card. And I see that through the 2007-08 results that I've compiled, Logo produces 21 matches. And that's not a guarantee that those are all Logoman matches, or let alone Logoman Autograph, but let's just see where that gets us. So the first appearance of Logo is the 2002-03 Upper Deck product, which is the NBA Logo Mania Patches Autographed. That is a 9-card insert set from 2002-03 Upper Deck. It's got 3 1-of-1s that are Logoman Autograph 1-of-1s, and 3 of them are Michael Jordan, 3 of them are Kobe Bryant, and 3 of them are Jay Williams. And then they are each numbered with the player's initials -NBA. So for Michael Jordan, it's MJ-NBA, MJ2-NBA, MJ3-NBA. So those in order are I believe his first three, at least per my research, those are his first three Logoman autograph cards. So we have that. We have those three. Those are solo Michael Jordan autograph cards. Coming up after those three, we have we have to fast forward to the next year, 0304, where we get an SP game used jersey logo patches, but no, it doesn't appear that there's an autograph there. And then from Ultimate, we get signature logos. And the signature logos is a card that sold a few years ago for about $3 million. And now it's just more commonly referred to as the Ultimate Logoman Autograph MJ. From that first year of not from the first year, but from Ultimate Collection, from LeBron's rookie year. I think that's perhaps what that product is most known for. So then, if we go ahead to 2004-05, we get another Ultimate Collection Logoman autograph. If we go ahead to 05-06, we get SP Game Used autographed Authentic Fabrics logo tag. Not sure if that's the NBA logo. It's possible that's a tag Logoman autograph. And then we get another Ultimate Collection Logoman autograph of MJ. We go ahead to 06-07 and we get another Ultimate Collection Logoman autograph of MJ. If we from there, let's see what's the next Logoman autograph that we're going to see. So then it appears that in 07-08, MJ might not have had any Logoman autograph singular player cards. In other words, cards featuring only him. At least that's what the quick survey, the checklist looks like. And so, okay, so like I said, I've only composed this through 07-08. So there we just went through a survey of his solo Logoman autograph cards. Now let's go to multiplayer. And multiplayer Logoman autograph cards, here's what I have up through 07-08. So in 04-05 Exquisite, there is a dual Logoman autograph card with LeBron. That's the only duel that MJ has in 04-05. In 05-06, we get a Logoman autograph duel with MJ and Dr. J. We get another one with MJ and Scottie Pippen. We get a triple with MJ, Magic, and Bird. And we get a triple with MJ, Pippen, and Rodman. In 06-07, we get another dual Logoman autograph of MJ and LeBron. We get a triple Logoman with, doesn't appear that there's an autograph on that, with LeBron and MJ and Carmelo. Another triple, but it doesn't appear to be an autograph with LeBron and Kobe. And I'm not, let me try to stop mentioning the ones that don't have an autograph. I'm just trying to focus on those. Then we get to 07-08. We have a dual Logoman autograph with MJ and LeBron again. We have a dual autograph Logoman with Kobe and MJ. That's the card in question. That is the $13 million card. Then we have two more triple Logomans, but it doesn't appear that there are autographs on them. Okay. So there is a review of the 21 logo matches, and then some subset of that, maybe like half or maybe a little bit less, were Logoman autographs that had MJ, and there were the one, and then I guess you get some really cool ones. You get two different ones with LeBron through 07-08, or I'm sorry, it looks like you actually get three. It looks like MJ and LeBron have three through 07-08. You get these or I guess it was just a Logoman with Pippen and Rodman. Then it's a Logoman autograph with MJ, Magic, and Bird, which is pretty crazy. That's a phenomenal card, obviously. So anyway, all of a sudden though, when we start reviewing the menu, and we start diving in, we start to see that the framing of this as the one of one, as the only dual Logoman autograph of MJ and Kobe, that's true, and that's quite special. But aren't some of these other cards pretty special too? What about the triple Logoman autograph of MJ, Bird, and Magic? Or what about those three Logoman autographs of MJ and LeBron, two of which predate the Kobe? Or what about this? It doesn't have an autograph. They don't have autographs. But what about the LeBron, Kobe, and MJ triple? So that doesn't belong to the category of dual Logoman autograph one of ones. But that appears as if it might. I know Exquisite had 08-09 and 09-10, and I haven't looked at those yet. But certainly that there's one of one potential with the LeBron, Kobe, and MJ Logoman triple. And the Magic Bird MJ Logoman autograph. I'm not sure if they ended up making more of those or not. Like I said, I haven't completed the spreadsheet yet. So, but there's a lot of quadruple one of one potential. If I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it. There's a lot of potential here for framing of cards as one of ones of substance, of type, and of category. So when we do look at the full menu, I think and this isn't even the full menu. I'm only looking at one of ones of Michael Jordan up through 07, 08, which is just a decade plus a year of the offering of Michael Jordan one of one cards. And it just as an aside, but sort of a small insight into my collector philosophy. Once we do sort of review the substance of the one of one offerings, it strongly nudges me towards wanting to look at the earliest issues. Some people have sort of asked me, why is my focus so much on, for example, 98, 99 Upper Deck, which is a set that I'm feverishly seeking to get MJ Gold one of ones from. And one of the reasons why is because I do find it quite appealing that once I have this list of MJ one of ones in hand, that one of the easier ways to sort it is to do it chronologically and to look at which ones came first and which ones came second, and and are there any first appearances or something like that. And so the dual Kobe MJ does have a first appearance nature to it as well. It is the first appearance of a dual, and the only of a dual Logoman autograph of the two of them. So it certainly tells a compelling story, but I guess my point is a lot of this stuff tells compelling stories. I think that, for example, a card belonging to one of these first year MJ one of ones has a compelling story. I think there are many that have compelling stories from the second year. There are many that have compelling stories from the third. I mean, there's lots and lots of compelling stories in here. So I think that gives a little context. And so now let's go over to sales history and let's look at a few of these cards that were discussed. So here I've used some Boolean operators to narrow my card ladder sales history results to be cards of either Kobe or Jordan and Logoman cards of those two. So the first one that comes up now is what I think I can accurately describe as an outlier. The highest sale meeting that criteria is the dual that just sold for just under 13 million. The next one up sold on June 1st of 2024, and it is that 2003 Ultimate Collection MJ. Now, let's review what the marketing pitch looked like for that card, the marketing copy. And here you can just take a look at the card. It also happens to have the holofoil Upper Deck logo and patch window, and it's just an elegant, stunning card. Encapsulated by PSA with an autograph grade of 10, but a card grade of just authentic. And I found, as I was reading this, here's what the marketing copy for this card looked like. And I'll just read a sentence or two or three maybe. So, residing at the very apex of prestige, exclusivity, and design, this wholly unique Upper Deck Ultimate Collection Ultimate Logo Signature Collectible is the quintessential tribute to Michael Jordan's league-altering presence. This is Jordan's very first signed Logoman patch card in a Bulls uniform. While the previous year's Upper Deck release featured a trio of Jordan Logoman patch collectibles within the Logomania patch autographs insert set, those cards all featured his airness in a Wizards uniform. Okay, so just as a little tangent off of that, we noticed that when we were looking at the spreadsheet that 0203 marked the advent of Logoman autograph cards of MJ, those three. And then this caption gently points out that those happen to show MJ in a Wizards uniform, and that the ultimate that was being advertised in that particular listing shows him in a Bulls uniform, making it the first Logoman autograph card of Jordan in a Bulls uniform. What I don't believe mentions is that The Wizards one, it can be described as plain days, since 0203 was a plain days card for him. 0304, it's more difficult to make that argument, although I do know some subset of collectors who believe that the season after retirement is a sort of plain days card if that card documents their final season, because otherwise there is no card to document their final active season. So in that sense, it's sort of their final plain days card. Not everybody agrees to that, though. So, and I have a picture of that of one of the three MJ. Here, so here we go. So here is a picture of one of them, and indeed it does show him in a Wizards uniform, and it says Michael Jordan Wizards. So, the downside is all the Bulls nostalgia is ostensibly removed from this card because of that, but the upside is that it has an indisputable claim to being a plain days card coming from a plain days season. So here we see the marketing pitch behind this card, sort of presenting it as a first of a different type, and in that sense this card also holds the one of one of one of one. It's the only one of one parallel to this particular card. And then so that gets it to the one of one, and then the fourth layer comes on when we consider the fact that it's the first Bulls logoman autograph, Bulls uniform logoman autograph of MJ, and so but I guess it's not the only one in that category. There are other Bulls logoman autograph MJ. So let me pump the brakes there. Actually, I think using the methodology that I was using before, it's really just a one of one. But it's not the only one in the category of Bulls logoman autograph cards for MJ. But okay, so we see here that this has quite a compelling pitch too. The first ever, the undisputed first ever Bulls uniform logoman autograph card of MJ, and it comes from Ultimate Collection, which is quite a prestigious release as well. And 0304 Ultimate also has the additional appeal of being LeBron's debut season, and if it happened, and 0304 is just an inflection point in the manufacturing of basketball cards, as it marks not only the rookie season of LeBron, but the advent of products like Exquisite, the introduction of Jordan's first Bulls logoman autograph. It's really a pivotal year of basketball cards. So let's see, what did that card sell for? So that card, which is Jordan's second highest sale in the category of logoman autograph, and it's his highest solo card ever, sold for just shy of $3 million on June 1st, 2024. Has a card letter value today of $4.3 million. That's reflecting the fact that Michael Jordan's index has had a substantial increase since then, as many indexes have. So is $4 to $5 million, with the anchor of that almost $3 million comp in hand. I think it's not unreasonable to expect that perhaps this card is $5 million, $4 million, somewhere in that vicinity. And then we get to two privately reported and verified Kobe flawless logoman autograph sales very recently. Both coming from August 1st, one for 2.3, one for 1.7. And then below that, the next sale we get to is, in fact, one of the cards that we noticed when we were looking at the spreadsheet. It's not an autograph card, but it is the Jordan, LeBron, Kobe triple logoman. No autograph, but a triple logoman. This is from 06. And so if we hop back over to the spreadsheet here, is that triple the first triple to feature those three? And it looks like it is. Yeah, it looks like it is. Nope, sorry, it's not. Some of the naming conventions of these are a little bit odd. So I see here that 0405 Exquisite has a triple with LeBron and Kobe too. So the marketing copy for that one, maybe not quite as strong. Maybe we can just sort of see here. So this magnificent triple logoman celebrates three of the most talented. The card front, yeah. So we don't see any discussion first or anything like that. So not quite as compelling of a slogan for that one, but nonetheless, that sold for $1.68 million in August of 2022. Card ladder anchored it to Kobe's index, and that projects a value of $1.7 million today. So then we have Kobe's 0304 Ultimate. Now, I don't have a checklist available for Kobe, and Kobe 1/1s or anything like that. So I can tell you that it also sold in 2024, but this one in August, it went for 1.584 million and has a card light value today of 2.26 million. So maybe that Kobe is in the ballpark of 2 to 2.5 million today, possibly, and the Jordan maybe between 4 and 5 million. And we'll bring up one more here. So this sale actually came from June of 2025. It's a 2009-10 dual autograph Logoman of LeBron and Kobe. It sold for 1.16 million, card light value today of 1.37 million. And so there can be a tendency, without consulting the full checklist of options, to sort of say, man, look at this. I mean, a duel of Jordan and Kobe Logoman autograph just sold for 13. So does that not bump the LeBron Kobe? And maybe it does, but it can be a slippery slope of trying to start equating cards because of the nature of how these cards actually relate to each other, based on their properties, based on the singular nature of that being the only MJ Kobe dual Logoman autograph is a very important part of its ultimate elevator pitch. And if a card lacks the ability to claim a firstness of some import or some significance, or a category, or the only card in a significant, meaningful category, if that claim can't be made, then we run into a real tension with our market. And here's what I mean. Our market is in many ways a winner take all market, that the value gap between the most collected players and players who are almost as good as them, but not quite, or almost as culturally significant as them, but not quite, that there can be enormous multiples in between them. So for example, I really love to use the total MVPs metric. That metric has MJ at 11, LeBron and Kareem tied at 8, and then Magic Johnson at 6. So Magic is, from the point of view of the metric of total MVPs, almost or more than half of MJ. But his card market is nowhere near a card for card, like for like. His card prices wouldn't come close to being half of MJ, or more than half of MJ. So there's this disproportionate reward in a winner take all market, or what's also called a superstar market. The disproportionate attention accumulates on the Michael Jordans of the hobby, on the LeBrons of the hobby, or in Kobe, it's a different metric. It's this cultural impact phenomenon that where he sits very high atop that list. And sort of when you have somebody, when you have these superstar markets, that a lot of the attention and interest accumulates at the very top, and it doesn't get distributed in a proportion that's equal to, say, how the hierarchy works out of how great all these different players were, or how culturally important they were. I mean, Magic Johnson was quite culturally important too, but again, he's multiples behind Kobe also. So you get these results, and then once that result gets codified or printed through the mechanism of price and opinion pieces and sentiment, then it snowballs, and it actually reinforces itself as time passes. And so you get an accumulation at the very top. And so, hearkening back to something that was mentioned earlier about the narrow difference that can support that can distinguish an Olympian from a gym teacher, in the same sense, there can be just the narrowest distinction that marks what is considered to be the best card versus the second best card, or a top 5 card versus a card that's just outside of the top 5. And even if the difference can be quite narrow, that in magnitude it can actually be profound when measured by the markets, when measured by market demand. And that's actually what kind of is a phenomenal aspect of the rise of this dual Logoman autograph Kobe MJ, is that as we discussed earlier as well, it sort of rose from obscurity. There was very little knowledge of this card, and all of a sudden it's the highest selling card of all time within a month, which I think is a testament to the fluidity, the dynamism, the effect of storytelling, that can happen with cards, that a card can be plucked from obscurity, and if it has those traits and it enters the stage, and that buyers evaluate it and suddenly decide that it will be crowned as the highest selling card of all time. So let's sort of see if we can tie things up here. What is my opinion as a Michael Jordan collector? So I think I sort of hinted at it before, but look, I mean, I'm going to express an opinion now that I just want everyone to be sure that they know that this is coming from me as a Michael Jordan collector, and this is not intended to represent the point of view of the market or the buyer or of this card or other collectors who may have a more compelling or a better way of looking at things than me. But for me, I don't see the addition of Kobe to this card as improving it, or as augmenting it or complementing it. I see Michael Jordan as the singular greatest basketball player of all time, and sort of the feature of any athlete besides him is a distraction and honestly a detraction from the card rather than a compliment. And so even though the addition of Kobe places this card into a category of one, that I'm not particularly interested in that category. Now, that's not to say that it isn't legitimate for others to take a great interest in it. If somebody is a huge fan of both of these guys, then that special category of it being the only dual Logoman autograph of these two, it's terrific. That's a terrific slogan for this card, but that slogan doesn't mean much to me because I don't view the addition of Kobe to this card as enhancing it in any way. And in fact, I would default to a preference for possibly this one if I was trying to decide what my favorite Logoman autograph Jordan would be. It might be that one. Another card that I do think warrants consideration is the Logomania Jordan. This one happens to be MJ NBA, so this happens to be the first appearing card in the checklist as well. Let me just show the back here to make sure. Yeah, this is MJ-NBA, not MJ2-NBA, not MJ3. This is the first appearing in the checklist from the first Logoman autograph set to feature Michael Jordan. So I think that is a particularly remarkable card, albeit in the Wizards uniform, which dings it for some people. And I just think a case can be made for several cards within the Logoman autograph category. And then if I'm not restricting myself to that, I would certainly come look at these first year of Michael Jordan 1-of-1s, and I think those are quite compelling to me as a Michael Jordan collector. So that's my point of view, is that I sort of look at the surrounding sales history. I look at the menu of 1-of-1 options for Michael Jordan cards, and I just have a hard time as a collector myself seeing that this duel should be or that I would consider it worth 2 to 3 or somewhere in that ballpark. Maybe I mean if we say that Jordan's value today, let's call it 4.3 million, that the triple is roughly, or sorry, that the dual Logoman autograph of MJ and Kobe is roughly triple that. I just simply, that's nowhere near how I would rank order these based on value. So that's just a Michael Jordan collector's opinion. I've already gone through, I think, what makes this card compelling on a number of levels, and I've tried to do that point of view justice. And I haven't even talked about how a Kobe collector might look at this. A Kobe collector might see the addition of Michael Jordan as an enhancement of the card. So, but anyway, let me not dwell on that. So there I've given my take on where I might rank that as an MJ collector. I had some final notes here about overreactions to this. I think it's an overreaction to think that everything is going up as a result of this. I think a pretty compelling case can be made that this is more of an outlier sale than it is capturing a widespread sentiment. But we'll see as more data rolls in. I think an overreaction also is that this is the end of the line. That that this is this is the top signal, and it may be a top signal. I don't think that I don't think it's an overreaction to say that we must be verging upon hitting the peak of optimism and bullish sentiment in this particular cycle. I think setting the highest sale ever for a sports card is a pretty decent is a pretty, especially breaking one that stood for about 3 years. I think there's some reason to that counsels caution, but I think it is an overreaction to say that there's really no reason to be collecting cards right now. You should sell everything and start over, or you should sell everything and get out. I have seen some people express that sentiment. I've seen some expression of the sentiment of it's time to just sit on the sidelines for a while. That can make sense, especially if someone's coming from a history such as myself of having continued to participate in a quickly ascending market during the pandemic 2001 and 2021 2022, and ended up overpaying for several things as a result of that. So sitting on the sidelines, exercising caution, I don't think that's an overreaction. I do think it's an overreaction to sort of treat this as as the death knell for collecting for the foreseeable future. I'm not quite sure that it's that extreme, but I do think it's. I think I ultimately settle on. I do think this is an outlier sale. I don't think that this was a Michael Jordan collector probably who collected this. I think that this maybe was somebody who is more of a generalist, a grail collector, somebody who found the tagline compelling, and or perhaps a Kobe collector, or somebody who collects both Kobe and MJ, but an MJ only collector. I don't really think this was a card for them. So I think we've provided a pretty credible case that this is an outlier, from at least from the point of view of an MJ collector like myself, but also that there is a case for it, and that that as an outlier, it's probably not a signal that everything's value suddenly changed. There is some degree of social proof and an expansion of what's possible, as we discussed earlier. But let's not get carried away either. This fits the mold of sort of a flurry of ultra high-end activity that hasn't necessarily been in step with any sort of like the multiples that we're seeing at sort of cards at the upper 5-figure, 6-figure, and 7-figure level that hasn't necessarily been echoed to the same degree in the lower levels in the data, at least not yet. And this certainly isn't looking like the pandemic when cards like, for example, Jordan's 86 Fleer PSA 9 is going up to $90,000 and today hovering around 25. So we don't really quite see that. Yeah, this is something different. All right. So that let's let that conclude thoughts on that sale and what it might mean. And let me go to the final thing I wanted to talk about that I just want to touch on really briefly here, but I have to talk about it. I have to talk about it because in previous HOJ-Casts, I've referenced this stat, and now I need to attach a disclaimer to it, which is really unfortunate. So Andy Bailey, one of my favorite NBA content creators, puts out a list regularly throughout the season where he aggregates a variety of advanced metrics and uses them to produce, this meta analysis of player rankings. And he put out a tweet, I guess 3 or 4 days ago, that said, if I replace one metric with another, then here's the list that comes out. And so he said, if I replace game score with ESPN's net points, so net points is a new stat that was issued about a year or two ago from ESPN, from Dean Oliver, godfather of NBA analytics, and Bailey had not yet integrated it into his aggregate. And so he was, must have been playing around with this, and he sort of said, well, look, if I start to aggregate it, and if I do, maybe I'll, kick out game score and bring in net points. If I do, then it actually adjusts the list. It displaces Jokic from first, and it moves Gilgeous-Alexander in first for the outcome of the 2024-25 season. And that was shocking to me because I had referenced net points a number of times, like I said on this podcast, and net points had clearly ranked Jokic in first for the 2024-25 season. So I do happen to have screenshots of that. So net points in the aggregates gave Jokic 520. He was a runaway winner. Second place was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 424. So even though Gilgeous-Alexander played more games, Jokic's total net points was just over almost 100 above Gilgeous, 520 to 424. And then per 100 possessions, I think is the way that's phrased. Per one. If we look at per 100 possessions, Jokic is 9.75 plus 9.75 net points per 100. Gilgeous plus 7.71. So Jokic just a runaway top performer in this stat. But Bailey says if he actually brings in net points, that actually boosts Gilgeous-Alexander. And I thought, how could that possibly be the case? And then, much to my surprise, I hopped over to ESPN Analytics NBA net points, and I saw that they had reconfigured the results. So now, if you look at net points for the 2024-25 season, miraculously, Gilgeous has taken the narrowest lead over Jokic. Now, remember, Jokic previously had 520 net points on the season. Now he has just 459. And if you remember, Gilgeous had 424 net points on the season. He has surged in the offseason rejiggering of this metric to 468. So by just the narrowest margin of 9 net points, Gilgeous-Alexander has surged ahead of Jokic. But you'll notice that Gilgeous still played 6 more games. So is it possible that they split the baby here and and that Jokic still was first in net points per 100 possessions? And what do you know? Gilgeous-Alexander, after the alteration of the computation of this stat in the offseason, Gilgeous-Alexander now is at 6.9 to Jokic's 6.8. By the narrowest of margins, by just a 0.1 of the net points per 100 possessions, there is a uniformity of Gilgeous having had the best season after this statistic said quite the opposite. And I found it disconcerting on a number of levels. Number one, this isn't the first time that I've noticed that a statistic was quietly adjusted in the offseason to punish Jokic and to reward the flavor of the day, whichever the player is that the particular media outlets happen to be wanting to produce metrics that validate validate this player. I've noticed that happen previously with a few other advanced metrics during several off seasons, but the unceremonious nature of it, the fact that it wasn't announced, it wasn't disclosed, there was no notice given that we've adjusted several of the variables and the parameters, and don't be alarmed, but here's the new results. If you still like the old result, here's that. We don't want to erase what we had calculated throughout the entire season, and presumably a metric that awards voters and fans and analysts of the game had been relying on. I know I had been relying on it, so we don't want to change that. But look, here we'll provide you the 2 data sets. Here's what it used to be, and then here's what it is now. Here are the modifications that we made. Here's how this impact has been felt, and here's why we did it. Of course, that piece of content was never provided. This was done under the cover of darkness, and without quite literally without me raising it, it would have never even been addressed. And so I chimed in. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Dean Oliver, so I chime in and I said, when I last checked, Jokic won net points, whether it's the per 100 or the cumulative, in a landslide in 2024-25. Another NBA catch-all quietly tweaked in the offseason that erases Jokic. Please say it ain't so, Dean. And then I said, here's my results. And then Dean, much to his credit, and which I think is quite admirable, steps in and says, this is a good catch. We had to update 2 things. First was how much cross-matching there is on defense. It's changed a lot in the last 7 years. Second was cleaning up rebound division of credit. Both of these generally moved point guards up and bigs down. There is uncertainty in all metrics, including the eye test. So he did reply. I'm a little bit dismayed by all this, so I didn't want to be combative. I have so much respect for him. I do understand that there is pressure when you're working for ESPN in particular, that your stats better say things that line up with with the narrative, or figure out a way to. And I'm not saying, I don't know if that happened. I would be just completely speculative if there was pressure applied to him, but I do know that in general, my perception is that ESPN favors narratives quite strongly. They are pushers of narratives quite strongly. Their block of voters vote in very particular ways. When you review who especially some of their loudest and biggest personalities, that they all happen to line up on the similar side of an issue quite a bit. So credit to Dean. I really appreciate him replying, especially because my comment was quite pointed. But also utter disappointment floods my point of view, because I'm probably not going to refer to this metric anymore. It can make a total fool out of me when I'm relying on it, and when I'm analyzing and making content about the sport, and then it's quietly changed in the off season without notice, and without the provision of keeping the old data set intact. So that was pretty disappointing. And once again, this is why I'll continue to prioritize box plus minus. Its formula is quite difficult to recalculate because it uses these like massive 15 plus year adjusted or regularized adjusted plus minus data sets, and then it uses current season data, and it regresses and it finds the best fits between the two and stuff. And like, it's very difficult to reconstruct that. It's happening at a massive data level. But he does, the creator does have a spreadsheet from a previous season that spells out how all that works and lets you walk through how he calculated it for that particular season. There's total transparency surrounding that metric. And that metric once did get tweaked, maybe 6 years ago or 7 years ago now. The metric did get updated, and he made a post that laid out exactly what happened and why he did it and what the consequences were. And that post is available to be read on Basketball Reference. So I think I'll just continue to prioritize and stick with BPM. So the reflecting on the 2024-25 season now. So here are some of the things that have happened. Now the history of that season has been updated, and the statistical measure of it has been adjusted to reflect a narrative of that Gilgeous-Alexander was the best player in the league, when that very same statistic said nothing of the sort as the season was ongoing. And then we have the whole Scott Foster officiating observations where the Thunder won by an average of 20 points and were undefeated when he officiated, and then when he didn't, they were much more modest in terms of margin of victory and record. And then we also have the fact that the Thunder now will have the most nationally televised games this season, and that is just not the treatment that small market teams get, even after winning or going to the finals. That there are all sorts of outlier and exceptional situations attending that 2024-25 and onward Thunder situation. And so it's pretty disappointing. And but anyway, I needed to cover that because I've talked about the net points thing on here, and all of a sudden that stat got dramatically altered quietly in the off season, and it rewrites the history of what happened during that season. So sorry to end on such a sour note, but this has been the Chris HOJ-Cast, episode 19. We will chat again soon.